Hey everybody, it's Coach Rob. Welcome back to another Coach's Log. As I sit here and try to get comfortable for this little conversation that we're going to have, I'm interested in experimentation as this subject. It's something that I talk to my athletes about fairly frequently, uh, especially as we start to get farther and farther into a training season or a race season, and we're finding it more and more difficult to squeeze out that extra 1, 2, 3% of performance, depending on what it is that we're looking for. And we start looking at equipment changes, positional changes, maybe clothing, diet, nutrition, pacing strategies, other tactics used. And everyone wants to have that quick win. We want that really quick, fast thing to do. Unfortunately, sometimes when we're out trying to aggregate a bunch of marginal gains, then we start to exhaust all of the possibilities before we start looking at having to purchase lots of new equipment or doing a complete overhaul of our training program. So instead, I like to do an experiment. And designing experiments is something that anybody can do. And you can do this against anything. Like I've already mentioned, it could be bike fit, it could be position, it could be diet, it could be training, it could be your nutrition, of course, pacing strategies, pacing tactics, things like that. These are all things that we can design experiments around. And what I would like to always tell my athletes, especially in this video, is that always start with the end in mind. If it is to get stronger, then make sure that that's at the top of your notes. This is about so-and-so getting stronger. This one is about this person getting leaner. This is about this person having better pacing strategy or better pacing notes for a given run or ride. That's the kind of thing that I need to hear from my athletes. Then the other thing too is that as we take a look at this, I think it's safe to say that having a little note on assumptions is a smart move. So you could think of it as assumptions or restrictions, meaning I'm assuming that this is going to work because I read in this magazine or this blog or this other article that this is going to work. Or you could say that I have a restriction because I just can't get this range of motion to fully cooperate, or I have a restriction because I can't afford to buy that fancy wheel set, but I would really like to understand if a new wheel set would be better for me. Those are things that you need to understand. Now, some of these assumptions and restrictions will, prohibit you from doing a test. If you don't, in the example of the wheels, if you don't have the wheel set that you're interested in, how are you going to test against it? The other thing too is that I like to use a traditional A/B test. We start with the baseline example. Let's just say that it's a bike position. You could do this on a road bike, a mountain bike, gravel bike, time trial bike, doesn't matter. If you're trying to find out that if a position is potentially more comfortable or a little bit easier to test, is faster, then what you do is you start off with how you would normally ride, your normal position. You have not made any mechanical changes whatsoever to your position or the bike itself. No cockpit adjustments, no fore and aft saddle adjustments, nothing with your cleats, nothing like that. Instead, you just go out and you design your test in such a manner that it's very repeatable. You remove as many variables as possible. Then what you do is you do that a couple of times, and then you go to the B. What is the B? Well, I'm going to drop my hands from the tops of the bars to the bottom of the bars, and I'm going to go back over the same course in the same gearing, under the same cadence, relative to power, and then I'm going to run over the same course twice in this new position to see if it does actually give me a faster time. Then you come back and you do this maybe twice. You do 2 A's and 2 B's and you interdisperse them. So AA, BB, AA, BB. Then when you're done, you come back, you take a look at your data for all of the A's and all of the B's, and you average that information together. This is field testing, field science if you like. It's not perfect. You're doing this outdoors, there's a lot of variables stacked against you. Everything from wind and terrain and weather, heat, humidity, cold, all kinds of things that could go against you. If you're trying to find out if you're aerodynamically faster using something like the Chung method, you're going to have to find a route that doesn't get any kind of traffic and that the wind is practically just dead still. So that means there's another restriction on your test. You better be willing to get up at the crack of dawn before the wind starts picking up. So these are all things to take into consideration when we're talking about experimentation. I also say too that when we're looking at things like making a supplement change or the possibility of purchasing an ergogenic aid through supplements in your diet, and there's lots of claims out there being made, the first thing I always do is I go to websites like examine.com and Ergolog to find out what the research is out there. Then I'll go out to some of the science journals and read those notes myself to make sure that I'm getting good quality information before I start to lay my money out on an experiment. So let's say that you're trying to figure out if creatine is actually going to be useful to you. Well, why don't you take a look and find out what your general concern is before you spend your money on that particular supplement to discover whether or not it will benefit you in your particular demand or requirement. All right, everybody, that's all the time that I have on the discussion of experimentation. I covered a lot of ground there, and it's definitely what I would call just a synopsis of what goes into your own experiments. But don't be afraid to try new things. Make sure that you document them, because you want to be able to quantify it. You want to be able to look at it at the end and go, well, you don't want it to be, well, that was subjective. Instead, you want it to go, well, that did not work well at all. And now you know it's out of your head and you don't have to pursue it any longer. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your training week, and we'll talk again very soon.